Sinners plunges us into the heart of the Mississippi Delta in 1932, a land scarred by the Civil War and still straining under the chains of Jim Crow. More than a backdrop, this setting is a character unto itself. As one reviewer notes, even decades after emancipation, black sharecroppers still work the cotton fields nearly 60 years after the end of slavery, with Jim Crow laws and the Ku Klux Klan casting a constant shadow. In this world, cotton reigns, endless fields stretch to the horizon, their picturesque beauty belied by the grim reality that formerly enslaved people remained locked in deep peonage. PBS historians explain that Delta sharecroppers were virtually locked out of any opportunity for land ownership or basic human rights, and that many laborers came out in the hole 5 or 6 times under the sharecropping system, driving thousands to flee north on the midnight train to Chicago in search of any escape. Sinners opens within this reality. The film's protagonists return home to a Mississippi steeped in generational poverty and racial terror. Indeed, critics observe that Coogler mourns broken black lineages while making bare the stains of American racism in this era. In 1932, the Great Depression was worsening these conditions. Black Delta farmers, already sharecroppers to white landowners, faced catastrophic crop prices and jealously enforced segregation. Vanquished Civil War dreams of black-owned land had given way to perpetual indebtedness. As the sons of sharecroppers in the film explain, a rainy week without cotton picking meant starving or going into deeper debt. Into this crucible of hardship and fear, Sinners introduces a defiant culture of community, church congregations, gospel choirs, and the cradle of the blues. In one prologue, a preacher warns ominously, "You keep dancing with the devil, one day he's gonna follow you home." This line, spoken by the character Jedediah, echoes down the generations, foreshadowing the film's collision of folklore and reality. Amid threats of violence in the ever-present Jim Crow order, a vibrant African-American culture still thrives. Vanity Fair observes that amidst that oppression and fear, a vibrant culture of church life, of emergent blues music thrives in Coogler's Mississippi. The Mississippi of Sinners is thus paradoxical. Men and women live under persecution even as they seek joy in music, dance, and faith. Into this fraught world enter Michael B. Jordan's twins, Smoke and Stack, former soldiers and gangsters who have escaped north but choose the devil they know by returning home. Their arrival, cash in hand, suitcase of Irish beer, and dreams of a juke joint sets the stage for a community struggle to build something beautiful even as the old terrors press in. Blues music is Sinners' lifeblood. The juke joint Smoke and Stack plan to open is modeled on the real social halls where Delta blues flourished. Here, the film ties history to myth. Critics note that Sinners pulls liberally from the folklore surrounding the Delta's blues heyday, where black musicians crushed by the weight of Jim Crow and the Great Depression plied their wares in juke joints. In Clarksdale, Mississippi, a real blues epicenter, a community's night of music becomes a spiritual event. Central to the narrative is Sammy, the preacher's teenage son and guitar prodigy. His talent is no mere plot device, it embodies deep blues lore. As Vanity Fair explains, early in the film, Coogler presents a folkloric idea. Some rare people have the gift of making music with such fire that they conjure spirits, benevolent ancestors and demons alike. Sammy's guitar playing is treated as otherworldly magic. In one electrifying scene, he wails on the guitar to a swarm of sharecroppers, and Coogler's camera whirls into a phantasmagoric vision of African drummers, electric guitars, and even Chinese dancers, a kaleidoscopic tribute to the diaspora and to blues itself. Music in Sinners is literally both the subject and mechanism of the film. A Pitchfork review emphasizes that Coogler opens the film with a voiceover linking the blues to West African griot traditions, making blues a conduit between this world and the one beyond. In practical terms, the soundtrack is steeped in authentic Delta blues. A song mentioned by name is Ludwig Göransson's "Bury That Guitar," echoing the film's themes. Moreover, cinematographically, Coogler enlisted acclaimed cinematographer Autumn Durald Arkapaw, Black Panther Wakanda Forever, to capture smoke-filled clubs and fields of cotton in widescreen splendor. Historically, the blues itself is a testament to resistance. Delta blues arose from the very conditions depicted in the film, former sharecroppers singing their pain. As one critic writes, many legendary bluesmen like Robert Johnson had the blues and then some. His story is one of heartache and despair, of slavery, and of a country disillusioned by its own past. Sinners alludes to this through Sammy. Slant magazine explicitly likened Sammy to Robert Johnson, noting that local legends suggest Johnson made a deal with the devil for his talent. In the film, Sammy's promise and fear echo Johnson's myth. The music thus becomes a narrative driver. It uplifts the community even as it summons literal demons. Ryan Coogler himself emphasizes the meaning of the blues. In interviews, he notes that Sinners is about blues music which was made to help a people who were constantly under attack, to help them cope and to remind them that they were human. This belief animates the film. The grand finale, triggered by Sammy's performance, literally materializes these themes. When he sings a fiery blues number, the power of his music draws in a trio of Irish vampire musicians, their harmonies a twisted tribute to union halls in the old world. In short, the blues in Sinners is portrayed as both salvation and curse. It connects people to their roots and yet unleashes repressed forces. Sinners is steeped in Southern folklore and African American spiritual traditions. The film assumes the audience knows or soon learns terms like haints, a Southern word for ghosts, and hoodoo, African-derived folk magic. Early dialogue lays this groundwork. In a conversation among churchgoers, an elder explains how haints work. They are restless spirits that switch places with the soul of a man. But he adds that vampires are even worse. Their souls get stuck in the body, can't rejoin the ancestors, cursed to live here with all this hate, can't even feel the warmth of a sunrise. This vivid description, heard in a Fresh Air interview excerpt, immediately ties Sinner's supernatural threat to the ancestral realm. It conveys the horror. These vampires are condemned to an endless, hated existence on Earth. The character of Annie, played by Wunmi Mosaku, explicitly embodies hoodoo. She is introduced as a hoodoo conjurer brought in by the brothers to prepare the feast and protect their juke joint. In Southern African American culture, hoodoo, also called root work or conjure, is a set of magical beliefs developed by enslaved Africans and their descendants, drawing on West and Central African spiritual practices. Though the film does not lecture, the visuals suggest Annie uses traditional folk magic. She simmers potions and carries charms. By invoking hoodoo, Sinners connects the community's modern struggle to an ancestral spiritual lineage. Meanwhile, the film abounds with small folkloric touches. The juke joint's walls are decorated with photographs and charms. Congregations cross themselves before demon encounters. After dark, local children whisper about haints and boogers, and townsfolk nod knowingly at each other. Even the stack of plates in a kitchen or a child's lullaby can carry ominous weight. These details root the vampire plot in genuine folk belief. We see that the same culture that sustains the people, church, blues, family stories, also holds the keys to fighting the darkness. In a sense, the movie's ghost stories are their real history, passed down like music. At its core, Sinners is a story about identity and the ties that bind familial, cultural, and racial. The protagonists Smoke and Stack return to Mississippi as black outsiders. After surviving World War I trenches and Chicago gang wars, they carry northern money but also northern scars. Critics note that their decision to use ill-gotten gains to open a juke joint represents both ambition and desperation. In leaving behind one devil, northern mob life, they hope to escape to another, building something independent in the Delta. Tragically, they find that even in a black community, the specter of white supremacy lurks. As Roger Ebert observes, their space cannot keep out the Jim Crow racism present in 1932. Violence invades their home on opening night. Race and assimilation are central themes. One powerful example is the antagonist Remick, an Irish immigrant turned vampire, Jack O'Connell. In the Fresh Air interview, Coogler explains that Remick identifies with the African American community. Both groups have histories of oppression. He points out that just as black Americans were forcibly removed from the continent of Africa, many Irish were similarly forced to work lands to the enrichment of others, but denied themselves immeasurable wealth. In Coogler's words, the connections between the two cultures are really obvious to spot until the Irish made the choice to become accepted as white. This insight deepens the film's conflict. Remick has a valid grievance about inequality, mirroring Killmonger's role in Black Panther, but his solution is violent. Coogler lets Remick voice a tempting argument, blurring the line between victim and villain. Assimilation and the price paid for it is threaded throughout Sinners. An L analysis frames vampirism as the price of entry into whiteness, a bargain where one's own culture and solidarity are devoured. Vampirism in the film thus becomes a metaphor for betraying one's community for power. An Irish or mixed-race character can choose to fight alongside black neighbors, or choose a darker fate. This theme even touches minor characters. Haley Steinfeld's Mary is dark-skinned and passes for white, illustrating the colorism within the town. Meanwhile, a family's past is inescapable. Annie the Conjurer, for example, remembers the suffering of her people and refuses to be silent. Even the Chinese-American characters in the film underscore this complexity. In a key interview moment, Coogler notes that the movie includes Chinese shopkeepers navigating life in the Jim Crow South outsiders in their own way. By showing multiple ethnicities under oppression, Sinners argues that the South's racial hierarchies displace many groups. One diner scene shows Chinese proprietors locked out of whites-only businesses, another shows the Delgado family maintaining a gambling front. All outsiders, whether black sharecroppers, Irish laborers, or Asian immigrants, face suspicion. Ultimately, Sinners suggests that Jim Crow's cruel calculus could twist anyone. In this world, assimilation, becoming white, comes at a steep cost. As Elle puts it, it demands a shedding of language, of history, of memory until you belong to something that will never truly belong to you. And the vampires enact that erasure. Thus, the cultural conflict is both external and internal. Smoke and Stack's family and community ties pull them one way, the promise of wealth and safety pulls another. When Remick's Irish vampire converts show up, singing traditional reels at the juke joint, it's a chilling reminder. Their way in was a cultural key, a vampiric acceptance into the white world that destroys from within. In one review's words, Coogler presents both sides, black entrepreneurs, artists, and revelers versus predacious white fiends, but digs deeper and complicates matters. The result is a portrait of identity that is as troubled and nuanced as its era. The horror of Sinners is steeped in metaphor. From the outset, critics emphasize that Sinners uses vampires to symbolize systemic evil. NPR's Fresh Air summarizes that these undead aggressors act as metaphors for oppression, exploitation, and systems that feed on black life, body, and spirit. The vampires in Sinners are not just monsters, they are manifestations of the very forces the characters have fought all their lives. Unlike classical vampire tales about aristocrats and outsiders, Sinners subtly redefines the vampire mythos. Pitchfork notes the twist. Where vampires have traditionally represented the feared other, in Sinners they embody the desire by those on either side of death to reach across the divide and touch the ones they've lost. In other words, these vampires are not merely predators, they are in a perverse way exiles seeking belonging. Remick and his followers sing Irish church hymns as they beg entry to the black sanctuary, betraying nostalgia for a home they left behind. This framing makes the vampire sympathetic at times, complicating what being evil means. The film also adopts classic vampire rules, but in service of its historical message. Garlic and wooden stakes appear on screen, but Vanity Fair points out that Sinners uses these tropes in service of a sad, harrowing evocation of history. For example, a sunlit stake to the heart, the traditional cure, can be seen as a purifying justice against a racist monster. More broadly, Coogler suggests that love and memory are the true antidotes. With Jim Crow, an imperfect church, economic despair, and the Klan looming, the film underlines again and again the essentiality of love, not as an antidote, but as an alternative to violence and hate. The blues music itself is part of this spiritual cure, allowing characters to commune with ancestors and find strength in each other. The metaphor extends even to assimilation, as noted before. One analysis points out that the vampire bite in Sinners is an invitation into a system that promises power, but demands a steep toll in return, namely, the erasure of culture, the quiet brutality of fitting in. In this reading, becoming a vampire is akin to abandoning one's identity to survive in a white-dominated world. The film's Irish vampires literally drink blood at the Old South's feast, a graphic image of how white supremacy consumes and rewrites the lives of others. As Elle succinctly puts it, here the vampire doesn't just feed, it colonizes and tries to rewrite history. Notably, Sinners ends in the fog of war between worlds. A specter of apocalypse looms as the juke joint becomes a battleground. Yet, even amidst the gore, Coogler emphasizes what humanity endures. One reviewer observes that Sinners relentlessly drives home that even in the darkest night, fate is at least a little bit negotiable. In other words, the film insists that collective resistance through music, faith, and unity can push back the abyss. Sinners represents a bold new direction in Ryan Coogler's career. Known for grounded dramas, Fruitvale Station, franchise games, The Creed, and Black Panther movies, Coogler returned to wholly original storytelling with this film. Warner Brothers marketed it as Coogler's first film, born entirely from his imagination. The director himself described developing Sinners as being hit by a bolt of lightning in his heart. In interviews, he emphasizes personal stakes. He based the story on family lore. His own grandfather was from Mississippi, and on memories of being introduced to blues by his late uncle. The production values reflect Coogler's ambition. Sinners was shot on large format film including IMAX 65mm and Ultra Panavision 70, a rarity for studio horror. Coogler noted that going old school to film instead of digital would best capture the epic scale of the Delta landscape and the magic of live performance. The cinematography often holds wide vistas of cotton fields or ravages under intense southern sun. As one critic writes, Coogler proudly shot on 65mm with IMAX cameras, hoping to harness the large scale and aesthetic information, which creates moments of unwavering, textured beauty, even as it reminds viewers how the land itself feels distant and unforgiving. The widescreen allows us to see the world's scope, but Coogler also deploys long takes and whip pans in tight spaces from one storefront to another to immerse the audience in local color. Performances were crafted to match this vision. Coogler persuaded his longtime collaborator Michael B. Jordan to portray both twins, mirroring each other as foil. Shooting dual roles was logistically challenging. Sometimes Jordan wore a halo rig to swap heads on a double, but the effect is seamless. Jordan gives Smoke a brooding, thoughtful intensity, while Stack smolders with streetwise charisma. Critics note that both figures are distinct, one more pensive and the other dripping in charisma, allowing the film to dramatize internal conflicts with the same actor. Coogler's direction deliberately dwells on theme as much as on action. He devotes the film's first half to everyday life, assembling the juke joint staff, watching children play, and commissioning local artists like Delroy Lindo's Delta Slim, an alcoholic bluesman whose talent is like a living history. This slow burn was intentional. As Roger Ebert notes, Coogler takes his time because he wants to narratively and visually immerse you in this world. By delaying the horror, Coogler shows us what is at stake: the family love, the emerging black entrepreneurship, the sacred musical tradition. Even the film's meticulous sound design adds layers. Sermons echo under starlight, harmonicas wail against whippoorwills, and the score by Göransson weaves jazz, blues, and African rhythms. Ultimately, Sinners reflects Coogler's cinema like a prism. He brings together elements from all his past work: the cultural pride and diaspora consciousness of Black Panther, the gritty authenticity of Creed, and the social justice heart of Fruitvale Station. A Vanity Fair writer summarizes, Coogler has made a wide-appeal studio movie that nevertheless feels deeply personal and unorthodox. The film's ambition occasionally outpaces its focus. Coogler juggles a dozen themes: family, faith, race, and justice, myth, and even admits he had to turn around and figure out the vampire component late in production. But he insists that all these threads are inseparable from his voice as a filmmaker. Upon release, Sinners has been hailed by critics as a daring genre hybrid. Pitchfork calls it a transcendent Southern Gothic vampire musical blockbuster, and Slant magazine lauds it as one of the most distinctive, confident mainstream films of the modern era. Many commentators emphasize that it breaks new ground in Coogler's filmography. After proving his skill on major franchises, he has returned with a film that is uniquely his own voice. Critics highlight the film's rich symbolism. Roger Ebert notes that Sinners weaves an astonishing number of themes: African folklore, America's racial history, decimated black families, black freedom, black-owned properties, the importance of ancestors and kin, and the binding power of music, all centered on Sammy's character. This list encapsulates the film's depth. The Festival of Books and Interviews suggests that Sinners is already a candidate for serious awards and scholarly analysis. Many see it as part of a trend where black filmmakers use speculative genres to address history, akin to Lovecraft Country or Get Out, but pulled fully into Coogler's visionary space. The audience reaction has also been strong. Early social media chatter, outside our research here, notes that viewers have been moved by its blend of spectacle and message. The soundtrack is already noted on indie charts, and the film's imaginative poster art celebrates its collage of blues motifs and gothic imagery. It has reportedly become an early award season buzz, and some comment that it may well be Coogler's first Oscar contender. In Coogler's broader context, Sinners cements his reputation as a filmmaker unafraid to swing for the fences. Pitchfork's review places it at the climax of his trajectory. After the cultural phenomenon of Black Panther and the personal stakes of Creed, Sinners is described as a culmination where Coogler finally had the freedom to fully articulate his themes. Coogler himself said it would have been riskier not to make this film than to delay a Marvel sequel. Indeed, by putting his studio clout on the line, he has delivered a work that scholars and fans will study for years to come. As we reflect, Sinners stands as a modern Southern Gothic epic, a movie as much about the present as it is about history. Through its chapters of music, myth, and memory, it reminds us that the scars of 1932 still echo today, but so does the power of community to imagine another world. In the words of one reviewer, it proposes an alternative mode of being, love an alternative to hate, and shows that even in an age of monsters, humanity's song endures.